Hello and welcome to Vertical Club episode 1. So this is our very first episode here, and this is a very new project that we have at Phil Group. So we're just starting out in this podcast world. And today I have with me a very special guest. So someone that is a journalist as well. So we thought it would be the perfect fit for this first episode of Vertical Club. So thank you, George, for being with us and accepting this invitation to be with us. This is your first time in Porto. You come here for the European Coworking conference that it's happening in the next few days here in Porto. And I would just really like to know, because this is something that I've been wondering all the time with people that never been to Porto. So for me, this is the best city in the world. But I would like to know, what are your expectations and what you saw so far? Because you just landed, so you're here just for a few hours. How are you feeling the city? Like, what you're thinking of it?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for the invitation, and I feel honoured to be your first podcast guest. Also feeling a bit of pressure. But
No pressure.
yeah, this is a long overdue visit to Porto, really. I've been to Portugal several times before, but never up to the north. Everybody I know who's been here has had fantastic things to say about it. And my colleague Paul is a real fan. He's given me a list of places I should visit while I'm here. I've drunk a lot of the fantastic wine from this region.
Yes.
And yeah, I know a little about it. So it's really great to be here. And in the short time I've been here so far, you know, we've had a little walk around. We walked through the old market, the food market that's been renovated. That looked fantastic. I should be heading back there at some point.
Absolutely. I was going to say that. You should definitely go back, because besides being one of Porto's most iconic places, you're also going to find some of the very best food and wine. So it's great to take some home with you as well.
Yeah.
So just tell me a bit your motive to visit Porto. So you're here for the European conference, co-working conference. Is this your first time at the European co-working conference, or?
Yeah, the co-working and flex workspace market is a relatively new one for us. We launched a website about 18 months ago called Urban Living News, and it predominantly covers what we call the living sector. That's specifically co-living, student accommodation, build to rent and senior living housing, but we also include the flex workspace sector in that, because I think there are so many parallels now. You know, those markets are starting to cross over. I think workspaces now are starting to provide an experience for the people who work there. They're hiring hospitality professionals to put on programming, to provide F&B experiences. So we're seeing a lot of convergence between those asset classes. So yeah, so I'm here to meet as many people as I can at the conference, to tell them about what we're doing in this market, to learn a bit more about the market across Europe. I'm quite familiar with the space in the UK, but my knowledge of the co-working space in Europe is not very good. So yeah, I'm here to meet people and to learn, really.
Yeah, it's going to be a few days of knowledge, and also a great way to connect with people around the hospitality theme. And you were talking about international hospitality media and one of the websites that you have in that matter. So what I was going to ask you, well, I would really love for our listeners to know a little bit about you. So as I said earlier, you are a journalist. You've been 10 years in this hospitality themed journalism. So you've been a travel journalist and everything. So I would like just to, if you could resume your life right in the journalism area until getting to the hospitality area, I would love for you to just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you ended up just in the hospitality area instead of any other area in the journalism segment.
Sure. Okay. Well, before I became a journalist, I had a very unusual career path, I think it's fair to say. After graduating, I did a lot of different jobs. I didn't really have any clear direction. I was a cycle courier. I worked in a record shop in the West End of London. Lots of other quite random things. But I've always been interested in writing. You know, I used to write for school magazines, college magazines, music fanzines. And when I was in my late 20s, I did a postgraduate magazine journalism course. And 2 weeks of that course involved work experience at publishers. And the place where I was sent was a B2B publishers. They had a lot of publications in the construction industry, in the retail industry. And I got on well there, and they offered me a job right straight away after the course finished. So that was the first place I worked. And after about a year there, I moved to a publisher of B2B publications for, I started on a magazine that was for the residential development sector. I started there as a reporter, and I became deputy editor and then editor. That company had quite a few different titles. They had a magazine called Homes Overseas, which was selling very well. It was a consumer title, and that was selling very well in the early 2000s, which was a period when a lot of people in the UK and Ireland were desperate to buy holiday homes in Spain, in Portugal, in France, and increasingly in more and more exotic locations. So did quite a bit of traveling while I was there to the Caribbean, the US, and
that actually enabled you to travel a lot as well. So you've seen a lot of different realities in that matter.
Yeah. And it was while actually I was on a press trip for that magazine in Provence, in the south of France, that I met Piers Brown, who is my business partner at International Hospitality Media. So we got chatting. I started doing a few bits of freelance work for him, and that working relationship kind of grew and grew to the stage that we ended up working full time together. And we launched International Hospitality Media. We have 4 B2B news websites now.
Yeah.
The first one we launched is called Boutique Hotel News, which is fairly self-explanatory who that's for. Then we launched Service Department News a couple of years later. And that was followed by Short-Term Rentals, which I think you guys know because you're in that market too.
Yes.
And then Urban Living News. So we have the 4 publications. I'm the editor-in-chief, so I oversee the editorial department, and I also look after the Urban Living News website. And we also run events. We have conferences, educational and networking events.
Yeah, you also do a lot of webinars on the...
A lot of webinars. Yeah. When the pandemic hit, being an events-based business in the hospitality market was not a great place to be. So we had to
adjust.
We had to rethink things quite dramatically. The webinars have been great, actually. They've really enabled us to grow our audience massively internationally too, and reach a lot of people that we didn't know before.
Yeah, that's actually quite nice. I know that I know all of your websites, and especially the service departments and urban living. I think that they are very interesting for the B2B business, and the webinars, as you were saying, actually allows for people around the world to connect more easily, and it's been quite nice.
I really enjoyed doing them, actually. They're a bit nerve-wracking at first. It's a new way of working. But, in my career in journalism, the role has changed massively. It's a multimedia gig now. We do podcasts, we do video interviews, we do the webinars as well as using the written word. When I first started, it was all print journalism. The internet was relatively new. If you were working in B2B titles like I was, you were often designing the pages yourself and writing the news, doing the whole thing, which is a good grounding. But, the job has changed more in the last 5 years probably than in the preceding 30,
absolutely.
I think.
I also come from a background of journalism, and journalists are not just the ones that are writing the pieces. They are right now just editing everything and just doing everything. So it's a one-man job for a lot of jobs inside the area of journalism. So I can truly see what you're coming from.
It's quite an interesting paradox, because I think a lot of journalists actually are quite introverted by nature.
Yeah.
And when it was only in print, you could get away with that, but you can't anymore.
No, you can't. You have to
force yourself to be out there and
absolutely. Even in radio right now, which is something so interesting. There's always an image coming with the sound, so it's a very different environment than it was. So I can really see how international hospitality media has that figured out, because I know that you have podcasts as well, and events and webinars and all of that together with the the written content, it's very interesting.
I don't know if you have the same saying here, but in the UK there's a saying that somebody has a great face for radio, but that's not the case anymore, because
No.
even in the radio studios you have been filmed.
You actually need to have like a great voice and a good face, because you're going to show up anytime. In the internet, especially in the internet era is it's amazing. So about our co-working space, so you get to know a little bit of Vertical Firmeza, which is our new co-working space here in Porto. We also already have another one, which is Vertical Bolhão, but this one is the newest one, and I would just really like to know your first impression. So you are staying here in one of our corporate apartments. You've seen the space. We are here right now in one of the spaces of the co-working, so I would just like to know what your thoughts of it and how you've been feeling for staying here.
Yeah, well, firstly, I think you've done a really nice job renovating and converting the building, and I like that you've retained some of the historical details, all the lovely marble that's around in the staircases, and it looks to have been done to a really nice standard. I think the concept is great, really a really logical thing to do, and I think we'll be seeing a lot more of this, because since the pandemic, the way people work has changed a lot. A lot of people aren't tied to one specific location for their job. They can travel around, and if you give them a nice place to stay and a great workspace in the same building, then it's going to attract a really interesting mix of clientele. I think you'll get traditional corporate travelers,
absolutely,
but I think you'll get a younger cohort of
yes, I was actually going
digital natives, if you want to use that phrase. It's an overused phrase.
Digital nomads. So I was actually going to ask you that, how you see the future for this type of places, now that our way of working, as you were saying, has completely changed. People nowadays most people can work from everywhere in the world. So these type of places are a novelty and something that do you think it will grow for the next years?
I think we're at a really interesting stage, because a lot of big corporate companies who have allowed people to work predominantly from home for the last few years are renting a lot of very expensive office space, and they're really pushing hard to get people back into the office. But a lot of people, especially younger generations, have got so used to working from home now that they simply aren't going to accept that. They're saying, no, I don't want to be in that structure. I don't want to have to spend 4 or 5 days commuting and going to the same office. And I don't think those people are ever going to go back to the way it was before. I think employers are going to have to be much more flexible. They're going to have to be more aware and more considerate of people's lifestyles and circumstances, and kind of work around that. And I think that buildings like this are definitely the future. Enabling people to travel from one city to the other, experience new places, get right under the skin of the city, learn all the little secret neighborhoods, the great places to see, while being able to earn a living.
Because this co-working space, as well as our other co-working space, are right in the heart of Porto. Do you think that being inside of the city will give our guests a better experience than if it was in the suburbs or anywhere else?
Yeah, I think so. If you're coming to experience a city, you want to be right in the heart of it. And I think places like this have got quite an important role to play in that. I mean, you'll be able to teach people, share a few secret places to go. And, people want to feel like a local. They want to know, they're going to the best places to eat, the coolest places to hang out, and it's an important concept, and this is a fairly compact project, but this kind of vertical mixed use concept, I think, is really going to grow. But we're starting to see it now in the US in major developments. They call them vertical villages.
Yes.
And they're planning these enormous developments that have got leisure facilities, F&B, residential, workspace, retail, almost everything you would need,
almost everything
without
in one
stepping
place.
out of the building.
Yeah, that's actually one of our flags, I would say, from Phil Group, as we were also discussing earlier. We call it vertical hospitality, because inside Phil Group there are several companies that do different services. So imagine that you're coming to Porto. We will have someone to go pick you up at the airport because we have a transfer company. We have an apartment where you can stay, a place where you can work. We also have Sailing, which is the company that does the boat tours in the Douro River. And you can also take a few days to go up the Douro Valley and just know a little bit more about the culture of this northern part of Portugal, which is very connected to Porto and Porto wine and everything else. So we have all of that. We have one solution in one company. So you think that if that will grow eventually also in other countries as well?
It's a very interesting model, and you've kind of got something for everyone. Whatever their motivation for coming here, you've got something for them. It obviously needs a lot of joined up thinking, and it probably needs quite a lot of resource, both human and financial, to run something like that. But it makes sense in a business, as a business model, because you're not focusing on one small group, one niche that might be here one year and then somewhere else the next. You've got a very broad market to target, so it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, as we are talking here at Porto, we have a very different client from the ones that we have at the luxury villas back in Douro Valley. So I think having that offer, it's going to make our business a lot more open to a lot of people. So I think it's really nice. Also, what are, from your experience with hospitality and in this area, which are the cities or countries that you think are more developed in this matter of this new way of working and way of living?
It's a good question. One of the barriers to it is affordability. So I think, people have, perhaps they would like to do this sort of lifestyle in London or New York or whatever, but you have to be earning a lot of money to be able to do that. Some of the interesting places that seem to be well set up for it is they're places where kind of forward-thinking and progressive individuals are flying the flag for it. So there's a guy over in the Canary Islands I know who is, I would imagine he'll be at the conference actually, but he's really pushing and flying the flag for that as a location. And there's some interesting stuff going on in terms of renovating buildings there to have a similar model to this, actually, to have workspace and accommodation. It helps to have a location that has good weather.
Yeah.
It helps to have proximity to a good lifestyle, somewhere where there's great food, where you might have a beach, or you've got great wildlife and nature to be next to. It needs to be somewhere that has quite a welcoming culture, and where the people are pleased to see visitors and play host to visitors.
I think we're checking all of those points.
Well, so far so good. Yeah, I've only been here a few hours, but no complaints so far.
No, that's great.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's still quite a new thing, isn't it? I mean,
it's very recent.
I know there are some places in Southeast Asia that are really focusing on this as well, and obviously you've got the advantage there. The cost of living is a lot lower than some European cities, but it's where the local authorities are also progressive enough to allow interesting new real estate and hospitality models in their planning policies. We were talking earlier over lunch about planning, and here it's very strict when it comes to things like historical buildings and that kind of stuff. But you need the local authorities and the planners to be open to new ways of doing things, because the world is changing. You can't. Cities are always evolving; they never stay the same.
And we need to keep a keen eye on that.
Yeah.
And be on because what I was going to ask you next is actually the challenges that are going to come ahead, because there's a lot of talk about this type of solutions in the city. Because the cities are overly crowded with tourists, and how can we take that away from the cities to let people that actually lived in it not having to leave their city? So it's a challenge. And how do you think these co-working places will be a good solution to that as well?
Well, if you take this building as an example, this was a former office building, which now has added accommodation on the top. So you're providing accommodation for the digital nomads and short-term visitors without taking away from the existing housing stock. There are challenges, and it is going to be difficult. I mean, when we were walking around earlier, there are still buildings ripe for renovation. There are still empty buildings here that have a lot of potential. There's a lot of work going on. But one thing that invariably happens when development on any scale comes to a neighborhood or a city is that prices go up, rents go up, and retaining the character, the thing that drew people here in the first place, is difficult. I've been to a lot of cities, and central districts of a lot of cities are all starting to look the same.
Yeah.
The buildings are designed by the same people. You've got the same shops, and you have to think a minute, where am I? Where actually am I? Because I'm not getting any of the...
Because it's losing the personality,
it's not
right?
There's no local character or charm coming through, and that's going to be a challenge. And as you say, the other challenge is not forcing out the local people in favour of hordes of tourists who spend a lot of money and are good for the economy, but that money is only going into a handful of pockets. It's not going to benefit the wider community. So it's a tricky balance. I don't claim to have the answers.
Yeah, it's a very tricky. I think with the development of everything that happened after the pandemic, everything is going in such a fast pace that I think even the cities and the businesses are having a hard time adjusting so fast to all these changes. So I think that for itself, it's already a challenge, and how the cities are going to work around it, it's how well succeed they will be. So I think it's a very interesting topic, and something that I'm sure that also here at the European Coworking Conference will be one of the topics, because it's really how we work and how we live is changing every day, and yeah, it's quite an interesting topic.
I mean, it's a whole new way of living for people who can do this. This kind of nomadic lifestyle. It sounds great. I mean, if I didn't have a house and animals, and if I didn't have the responsibilities, and I went back in time, I'd love to live like that for a few years. I think it would be an amazing thing to do. And yeah, I think people who have the opportunity to live that way should definitely do it for a while. I think it's great.
And what you were saying earlier about how also the companies have to adjust to the young people's needs of having a more remote job. I can work from Porto, but I can work from London, and everything will still be the same. So it's something that the companies are adjusting as well. And these spaces like this one we have, vertical co-working, we see that happen a lot. So we have a lot of digital nomads that come to work here, and we see how this freedom actually adds to their quality of life. So it's a very interesting option for work.
One thing I'm interested in, I've thought a bit about whether places like this can foster the kind of working environment that you would get in a traditional office when everyone is working for the same company, because that was one of the things that I used to love about old school journalism, was being in the office, having your deadlines, everyone working together, hitting your deadlines, sending your magazine off to print, going to the pub afterwards. You learn a lot from other people, you make friends that way, you socialize that way. And I think a lot of that has been lost in the last few years. And the challenge I think that co-working has is providing an environment where people can learn from their peers and where they can form those social bonds and social networks that we used to take for granted.
Yes, that is actually a very interesting topic as well, because companies are also having to adjust their company culture, which is something with remote work that kind of has been lost, right? Because we work remotely, we don't see each other every day, so it's different than being in the office every day. But I think what's the positive side of it, it's the type of freedom you get to have like a more balanced life, which is something that everyone looks forward. And I think having spaces like this where you can send your workers to work for a period of time, it's also very nice, and adds a lot of value to a company that can offer that type of service. Do
you think here in Porto, places like this will have a mixture of local companies who will take some of the space and then individuals who will be...
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, absolutely. Like you were saying, office spaces are expensive.
Yeah.
So I think this is a great way to balance the finances of that matter on a company. So you don't need that much office space, because you can have people work remotely and they can work here, and a flex desk is much cheaper than paying a rent of an office. So I think in Porto that is working really, really well. Absolutely.
And here, presumably, you just use the space when you need it. You don't have to sign a lease for 10, 15 years, like you would do with a traditional office.
Yeah, it's a lot more flexible, and I think a lot of companies are opting for that solution. And I think that's why we are growing, and this new co-working spaces it's the mirror of that matter. So it's really cool. So George, thank you so much. This has been like an amazing conversation, from one former journalist to a current journalist. It's always nice to talk to someone that it's in the area, and especially right now at the hospitality area, which is always growing, always developing, and it's been a really nice talk with you. I hope you have an amazing time at the European Co-working Conference, and also here in Porto. I know that you're staying only until Wednesday, but I hope you have a great time while you're here, and yeah, hopefully you can come back here at our podcast, and we can chat a little bit more about hospitality and all things related.
Yeah, thanks very much. Thanks for the invitation, and yeah, it'll be fascinating to come back in 2 or 3 years and see how the neighbourhood has changed around here. Yeah, but, no, been lovely talking to you. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much.